The recruitment office smelled of stale coffee and desperation. Lieutenant Colonel Marcus Hayes had seen every excuse in the book, heard every sob story from fresh-faced recruits trying to back out of their commitments. When the young woman walked into his office that Tuesday morning, her posture rigid and eyes downcast, he already knew this would be another one of those conversations. She wore civilian clothes, a long-sleeved shirt buttoned to the collar, despite the summer heat, and her hands trembled slightly as she placed her medical discharge papers on his desk. Her name was Sarah Chun, 24 years old, and according to her file, she'd been one of the most promising cadets in her class before requesting an urgent medical discharge. Colonel Hayes leaned back in his chair, his weathered face settling into familiar lines of skepticism. He'd been in the military for 32 years, survived 2 tours in combat zones, and earned his reputation as someone who didn't tolerate weakness. Now imagine what happened next, because what he saw in those papers was about to challenge everything he thought he knew about courage and sacrifice. Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper when she began explaining. She talked about anxiety, about panic attacks that left her gasping for air in the middle of drills, about nightmares that made sleep impossible. The colonel's jaw tightened with each word. He'd heard it all before. PTSD, they called it now, though in his day they just pushed through. She hadn't even seen combat, hadn't faced a single enemy, and here she was asking for an honorable discharge based on mental health. He let out a short, dismissive laugh that cut through her explanation like a knife through silk. "You're telling me you can't handle the pressure of training?" His words were sharp, meant to shake some sense into her. "Do you have any idea what real soldiers go through? What sacrifices actual veterans have made?" Sarah's face flushed crimson, but she didn't respond. She simply sat there, absorbing his contempt like a sponge soaking up dirty water. The colonel continued, warming to his subject now, talking about the young men and women who'd lost limbs, who'd watched friends die, who carried real scars from real battles. "And you won out because of some bad dreams?" The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Sarah's hands had stopped trembling. Instead, they moved with deliberate slowness to the top button of her shirt. One by one, she unfastened them, her eyes never leaving the colonel's face. He felt the first stirrings of unease, a soldier's instinct that something was wrong, that he'd miscalculated. When she pulled her collar aside, the fluorescent lights revealed what she'd been hiding. Scars, not the neat surgical lines of a medical procedure, but the angry, irregular patterns of shrapnel wounds. They traced across her collarbone like a constellation of pain, disappearing beneath the fabric of her shirt. Purple and white tissue, raised and twisted, told a story that needed no words. Colonel Hayes felt his breath catch in his throat, 32 years of military experience suddenly inadequate for this moment. "Afghanistan, 2019, Sarah said quietly, her voice steadier now. "I wasn't military then. I was civilian aide, helping to build a school for girls in Kandahar. The Taliban didn't appreciate our efforts. The bomb went off during morning assembly. 17 children died. I spent 6 months in a hospital in Germany, another year in physical therapy." She rebuttoned her shirt with the same careful deliberation. "Each button a small act of dignity reclaimed. I joined the military because I wanted to prevent what happened to those children from happening to anyone else. I wanted to be strong enough, brave enough, to make a difference." The colonel's face had gone pale, years of certainty crumbling like sandcastles before a tide. Sarah continued, her words flowing now like a river that had finally broken through a dam. "But every time I hear a helicopter, I'm back in that schoolyard. Every time I smell diesel fuel, I see their faces. The doctor said I have PTSD. I said I had purpose. I thought I could push through it, thought wanting to serve would be enough. It wasn't." She met his eyes directly for the first time, and what he saw there wasn't weakness, but a strength he hadn't recognized. "I'm not asking for your pity, Colonel. I'm asking for an honorable discharge because I've earned it, not in your uniform, but in blood I've already shed." The colonel stood slowly, his chair scraping against the floor in the quiet office. He walked around the desk, and for a moment Sarah tensed, unsure of his intentions. Then he did something he hadn't done in 15 years. He saluted her. Not the crisp, formal salute of military protocol, but something deeper, more personal. A recognition of sacrifice that transcended rank and uniform. "Forgive me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. I forgot that courage wears many faces and scars tell stories that paperwork never can. He signed her discharge papers himself, marking them with honors and commendations that would ensure her service, both in and out of uniform, would be recognized. As Sarah left his office that day, she carried not just papers but something more valuable: validation that her pain was real, her sacrifice acknowledged, her courage undeniable. The colonel watched her go, a young woman who taught an old soldier that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit when the war inside is one you cannot win alone. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. Sometimes the most powerful battles are the ones fought in silence, and the deepest wounds are the ones we cannot see. Let's honor every story, every struggle, and remember that strength is about never falling down. It's about having the courage to ask for help when you need it.